is not good lighting. Oh well, who cares? Who cares? Man, absolutely brutal day. I've been thinking about God, and that being somewhat of a dirty word in certain circles, certain people's minds. That's a pretty vague statement. It's a dirty word for many people for many different reasons, but sort of like, what is the role of God in deep healing work, deep realization, or just at any level of healing work, realization? And where it becomes sort of an issue to explore is because healing is about moving towards seamlessness with existence, dissolving identity barriers, dissolving, transmuting, transforming, digesting all the shadow, repressed, frozen energy. Emptying out so that one's experience moves ever in the direction of formlessness, of boundarylessness, the river flowing into the ocean. And what is the role then of God as you get deeper into that? Because when you sort of reify, you reify, the great potentiality, the infinite all, boundaryless ocean. You can just get lost in that contemplation, that eternal, endless, formless, nameless. And what then are we referencing? If we're talking about the one without a second, what then are we referencing? If we're recognizing that everything that is the ocean, that out of the ground of being emerges, condenses, crystallizes, individuates all the many forms, the variegated beauty of this world. Is that the right word? Variegated? Just like with the ocean, its substance is water. Yet you've got all these different flows, you've got all these different depths. You've got, on the surface, all these different the forms of the waves and the tides, typhoons, tidal waves, all this stuff, but it's still, it's always water. It's never anything other than water, though it takes on different forms. So you can have that sense, you can recognize that, you can inquire into that. And so you can come to this point of, the heart, is it the Heart Sutra? Heart Sutra? Form and formlessness are one. That's the non-division ultimately. Non-duality, not two. In a sense, you could say there's the transcendent, pure, infinite, and then there's the immanent, the various layers of creation, the immanent, that which unfolds in time and space, that which has a form. So you can kind of make that distinction, but then upon investigation, you can collapse that distinction. Or you can see the non-separation of that just like with a clay pot, if you're in a room of clay pots or ceramics. Now this is a Rupa, I'm riffing on a Rupert Spira idea. I think that's where I heard it from. Probably not original to him, but you've got all these different ceramic pieces and shapes, and ultimately it's just clay. It's still just clay, it's all clay. In that same way, you can see that seamlessness in creation. You can investigate your senses and recognize their ultimate formlessness, emptiness. And see, this is where the language starts to get into very potentially fraught terrain. Because you can say God is all is God. Now coming out of the mouth of babes, coming out of the mouth of one of these humans, one of these human beings, coming out of my mouth, coming out of any of our mouths, to say I am God, obviously that does not sit well. And it's not really, it's not really accurate, at least on the level that most people would hear it. You could slightly modify that phrase, I am God. You could say, I am is God. I am being a synonym for being, for the fundamental layer of creation, of existence, of being, pure being. I am is God. But formulating that into a sentence, I am God, that's not helpful. That's not really right, and that's ego inflation territory. Having said that, speaking out of the other side of my mouth, is kind of an equal and opposite blasphemy or dangerous statement to say, I am not God. Well, no, I don't really want to say it quite like that. I think the more helpful way to say it, one way I've been thinking of phrasing it is, everything that I am, down to every last molecule, down to every last layer of this individuated form, this individuated consciousness, everything that I am in this apparent incarnational stream. I'm sure there's a better way to say that, as Wesley, as an individual, for any of us, not just me. Everything that I am, God also is. And not one, he's not missing one iota of my being. God is everything that I am, with nothing missing, nothing in excess, nothing left over. Now the reverse would be, is where you can start to disentangle this a little bit. I, as an individuated form, am not everything that God is. And that's where it becomes, I think that is the reverential, that's like the correct ordering of the universe. Everything that I am, God also is. That, however, does not, the inverse of that, or the reverse of that, is not accurate. I am not everything that God is. As an individual self, I am not everything that God is. And that leaves room for reverence, because when you look at it from that direction, you're dealing with a magnitude of intelligence, a magnitude of majesty, a magnitude of power and grace and potentiality that is just so beyond, just eternally beyond. It breaks the mind to even head in the direction of contemplating that, the magnitude of God, of God's being. So the wave is not separate from the ocean. The wave can claim, I am every bit, everything that I am, everything that I essentially am is continuous with everything that is. What I essentially am is not different from the vast ocean. The wave, however, is not the vast ocean. It's another way to say it. Or the individuated ray of light, the sun, the beam of light, is made up of nothing but the sun. However, it is not the fullness, the majesty, the power, the magnitude of the sun. It's not separate from it. And see, that could be another blasphemy, I think, is to say that I am separate from God. That's sort of maybe the counterbalancing blasphemy to saying I am God, is to say I am separate from God, because you're not. But you start to recognize just the infinity, the eternity, the endlessness, the vastness beyond the category of vastness. It can't be contained. Categorylessness, and yet within that there's just eternal creative outflow, and it's awe-inspiring. It orders the universe with a kind of fundamental humility. It's like it right sizes the universe. It right sizes your place in the cosmos. Not separate from, carrying the DNA of the divine imprint. You could say in some sense a holon, is that the right word? A fractal. But the wave is not the ocean. The sunbeam is not the sun. Not separate from it, consisting only of sun, consisting only of ocean, but not the totality. So everything that I am, God also is. I, however, am not everything that God is. on some fundamental level, you can say that, but not as this individuated form. And then you think about all the stuff that out of this eternal wellspring, out of this eternal vastness, the planets, the solar system, the galaxies, the myriad life forms, complex organic processes, systems of weather, history, culture. You get this sort of panoramic, beatific vision, panoramic, numinous vision. It's Job talking to God, and God giving him this like instilling the fear of God, I guess, giving him this utterly mind shattering vision of his eternity, his majesty. Or I think that's in the Bhagavad Gita too. I haven't read that. I've just heard people talking about. So Arjuna asks Krishna, is he talking with Krishna? Can't remember. Some form of the Godhead, and he asks to see the beatific vision, or he asks to see inside the mind of God, and it's just so overwhelming that he begs for him to stop. Don't quote me on that. I'm kind of riffing on something I heard somebody say, but it's that idea of you can just access in your own mind just the endlessness and you just go, you fall into awe, you fall into reverence. And I've heard other people say this, and I agree that it's healthy to have, no matter at what stage you are on the path, it's kind of a hedge or a safe, what am I trying to say here? A hedge against grandiosity, to have that kind of fundamental humility. And you think about the Indian sages, if you've spent enough time going down exploring this terrain, you'll have heard a lot about, not just the Indian sages, but holy men from all of creation, from all of throughout history, who, let's say Nisargadatta, Maharaj, Ramakrishna, of course, Yogananda. I don't know. The point I'm making is that there's a strong devotional element, even in these kind of paragons, these exemplars of non-dual absorption. That they still maintain this kind of posture of reverence and go into rapture, and sometimes even explicitly just, Yogananda has all kinds of songs that he wrote praising God, and if you were to sit down and kind of nail him down on the Advaita specifics or the Hindu, Vedic the Vedic texts and the Vedic philosophical discourse, and make sure you get all the fine points right. I don't think he would disagree in the recognition that it's all God, It's all fundamentally God. Who you are is not separate from. That whole idea of separation is the illusion, and the journey to wholeness is falling back into that. I don't think he would dispute any of that, and I'm sure he talks about, all these great masters talk about that. Seamlessness of creation. And yet it's interesting that they all still have great reverence for, a lot of them have, very explicit reverence for God. Jesus, I think shows this as well. The Father and I are one. Non-separation, non-division. And yet he cries out to Abba. He prays to Abba. And he has this sort of father-son relationship. And I think there's something very human and healthy about that, about maintaining that posture no matter where you're at. Because there's like 5 different directions I want to go right now. I want to say more about Jesus and but I'll just say that it's just you're in the mind of God. One metaphor that I don't think is even that far from just being a plain description of the fact, but we can just, for speaking in a conventional way's sake, we can just say that we're living inside the mind of God in a way that is very similar to, parallel to, analogous to the way that our individual consciousness dreams. And we form these whole worlds and have these whole interactions at night that precipitate out of our kind of individual streams of consciousness. And that's kind of a useful framing to think about what's happening here universally, that you have this unimaginably vast beingness, but it's not just flat, empty being. It's omnipotent. If you want it in a word, it's omnipotent. Potent meaning power, but also you can see the etymological connection to potentiality. So when we're saying omnipotent, it's every possibility, full of every possibility. Omnipotent. That out of which everything rises. That out of which everything is possible. So you can't contemplate it. You can't really contemplate it. You can't really talk about it. You can talk up to the edge of it, but then you step back into what does that actually mean, and you're just gone. It's ineffable, inscrutable, indescribable. It's what is it, Saint Augustine or Thomas Aquinas? I can't remember. If you understand it, it isn't God. Si comprenderis, non est Deus. That God is not, cannot be held by any form, period, much less a concept. So you can't, it's uncategorizable, it's outside of the bounds of It's outside. It's just beyond, 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 beyond. Language can't contain it, so you point to it. Where was I going with this? Yeah, I guess just that, it's not a flat, when we say beingness, that can sound really kind of dry, but it's everything and more. Here we are. So in a in a way that's somewhat similar to us dreaming at night, and our minds sort of precipitate the contents, the objects of the dream and the scenario. You can see a very clean, easy parallel to, not perfect, of course, and we're talking about a magnitude of operation and dynamics that is just so beyond, but just in a very simple way, that the mind of God dreams all of this into being. And, that makes a lot of sense, really. It's just one way of looking at it. I think it's probably not too far from the actual reality, but there's a channel I like that talks a lot about Emanuel Swedenborg, Christian. Well, he was like a Renaissance man to the max, scientist, but then had this like 50-year just mystical engagement, exploring a lot of the subtler realms of creation, the heavens and the hells and all the different beings. It's from the 1700s, I think. He's Swedish, I believe. I think that's the last name, Swedenborg. European man, and he wrote just a ton about these experiences. And I interact sometimes with that community online, and I asked them, I forget how I phrased it, but something about why, in Swedenborg's understanding, why is there anything at all? No, this is what I asked. I said, well, where in Swedenborg's concept and what he saw, where are our souls, our individual life streams, where are they before birth? Kind of naively asking that just because I thought it could kind of reveal a little bit more about his thought. I wouldn't probably phrase it that way. Well, anyways, I asked that, and they said, the guy responded and he said that Swedenborg had the understanding from his experiences and talking with different beings on different, angels and different beings on different layers of creation, the different octaves, had this, what the information he was given is that each of us is like a dream or a thought in God's mind. Each of our lives is like God playing out a particular idea, maybe is the word they used. That each of us is like an idea in God's mind. And that just adds so much. I mean, all of these contemplations just infuse life with such a richness, symbolically, metaphysically, spiritually, actually. To think about. In the same way our dreams are sort of working out deeper themes, and there's kind of archetypical, you can dream on so many different layers, and there's more kind of superficial, working out like the residues of one's inner turmoil or stress or anxiety from the day or one's life situation. You can also kind of move into deeper layers of consciousness and more archetypical layers, deeper layers of one's being, one's psyche. And but that it's just kind of saturated with meaning all the way down. Psychologists, depth psychology, Jungian psychology, psychoanalysts, a lot of different people have recognized the potential of dreams to illuminate themes in our life, to untangle wounds and patterns. That dreams are not just kind of phantasmagorical fluff. I mean, maybe on some level, but that there's also a lot going on there. In that same way, there's an intention. It's like there is an intention out of the infinite mind, infinite being, infinite heart. Mind almost starts to get a little bit, I don't know, maybe infinite heart is a better way to say it, or just the infinite being. Out of God's self, this intention, this thought, this impulse arises as a you and arises as a me. There's more I want to say, but maybe I'll stop there. Do another video.